Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is 𝙍𝙐𝙬𝙉. Today we are looking at, is cinematography dying? That may seem like a crazy question because there's never been more cinematography in the world. You know, Instagram is full of people holding cool cameras, doing cool poses. I'm one of them. And it seems like everyone is making films. Everyone is learning about cinematography. So how can cinematography be in danger? Well, 20 years ago, photography was pretty much in the same place. And nowadays, even though the top is the top of the industry and the big photographers are making more money than ever, there is this huge middle ground that sort of eroded the ability for people to make a living out of, or at least a good living out of photography. This is because of easy accessibility to tools. Cameras and lenses have become better and better and cheaper. It's because of, how much photography we consume and how much is shared. It's because of how much information about photography is out there. And this is happening to cinematography as well. It used to be that in the days of film, to be a cinematographer, you had to, start as a, unpaid intern and become a camera assistant and work your way up to a gaffer. And then 10, 15 years into it, you could finally shoot your own independent film. Then 10 years later, you could potentially shoot a Hollywood movie. Now people are coming out of film school, doing a couple of indie features on digital and then getting a Hollywood film 5 years out of film school, which is unheard of. And it's not just from the bottom, the base of the pyramid that cinematography is in danger. It's also from the top, with directors becoming their own cinematographers, like Zack Snyder, Steven Soderbergh, Paul Thomas Anderson. All these guys, which we'll talk about later, have sort of usurped the authority of the cinematographer for themselves and, pretty much colluding with the gaffer to shoot their own films without a cinematographer. So will what has happened to photography and the expanding access to photography happen to cinematography? I mean, it's sort of like the Uber question, if you were the only person in Los Angeles with a car and a license, you could charge whatever you wanted. Even if you had a crappy car, you were always late, you were rude, you could charge $100,000 to take someone from one side of town to the other because they literally had no other choice. But as it stands, you can't even make a living wage from Uber or Lyft, it seems, because there are so many people with so many cars and so many people who have licenses that the bidding war drives the price down to almost nothing. You're really just paying, if you're driving for ride shares, you're paying, just monetizing the depreciation of your car, basically. Well, the same thing happened with cinematography. If you're shooting wedding videos, people are out there offering to do wedding videos with a Blackmagic Pocket and a gimbal for $200. That's for a 10-hour shoot. That's, not that much higher than minimum wage in a lot of states. Will cinematography go down that same path? Well, it is very analogous to photography, but not completely the same. You need much more gear to become a cinematographer. You also need to work with a team. It's very difficult to be a cinematographer all by yourself. And as a result, you need to have much more interpersonal skills. You need to have much more, team effort, a team ethic. It makes cinematography a rarer skill. And as a result, people will probably be able to charge more for it going forward. And while there are a lot of courses on cinematography, I have a bunch of great ones at CanonMasterclass.com, very few people are prepared to sit down and watch them and then practice and get good at those skills. So even though there is a lot of available expertise, it'll never be the same as photography, which is you can be point and shoot. The camera can do much more for you photographically than it can with cinematography. This is because you only need 1/100th or 1,000th of a second to go right for photography. And if you sort of spray and pray, you'll end up with a couple of decent pictures. The same is not true for cinematography. If you are trying to do a one-er or you're trying to even get a decent scene together, you much less likely to do that by accident. It really does have to be planned because these, you need to get seconds and minutes at a time. That's hard to do as a fluke. It's also good to say that movies aren't as much about money, meaning the people that buy cinematography, the directors and producers, aren't as price sensitive. I mean, a $5 million film is still considered low budget. And the difference between paying the cinematographer $200 or $2,000 a day on an 18-day shoot is still less than 1% of a $5 million film. So it makes no difference whether for the film, really, if the cinematographer makes $3,600 or $36,000 for 3 weeks work. What they care about is the quality of the work, how easy you are to work with. And really, the reason that people hire cinematographers is because they trust them. And that opens another can of worms. How do you build trust? Well, you sort of had to do that job for those people already in a low stakes environment. And that means working for free, working on spec shoots, working on projects where there's not a lot of money as the person's developing. The reality of that is that, can you afford to work for a month for free? Most people can't. People with money can. People whose either parents support them or have a trust fund or have money from a previous career are able to do all those things. People, that's why a lot of cinematographers, successful cinematographers, came from successful movie families. They were in the industry. They had no need to earn money for those first 5 years. So they could act as unpaid interns. They could act as unpaid camera assistants. They could buy their own gear. And it's kind of created this, this economic divide where most of the people working as successful cinematographers were able to do so because they came from well-off families. The same is absolutely true of film producers and film directors, because those professions also have, a 10-year or more period where you're working but not really making much money. So how are you able to focus on becoming a good director or a good producer without earning anything? I mean, people throw up their hands and think it's a mystery, but it really is. It's parental support or family support. Politics is exactly the same. Who can afford to run for office or do low-paid jobs for decades before they become elected governor? Only people from wealthy families. And that's why we have the political system in this country that we do. So I've talked about the threat to cinematographers from, too many people trying to get in the boat and sink it because it drives price down. Let's talk about the pressure from the top, and people like Zack Snyder, who probably don't know that much about cinematography, becoming their own cinematographer because they have surrounded themselves with a team of knowledgeable people, gaffers and grips and consultants, so that they can have the cinematography credit and the movie still looks passable. Or Alfonso Cuarón, who, I won't go into it today, but there's a whole conspiracy theory about how he didn't really shoot Roma, someone else did, and then he was able to take credit for it and get the Academy Award for cinematography. Or legitimate cinematographer directors like Steven Soderbergh or Roberto Rodriguez, who there's nothing really special about their cinematography. You certainly wouldn't win an award for it, but they prefer to be the one holding the camera, directing the gaffer and choosing how the film is shot, because they come from a sort of DIY background. They did that on their early films, and as they had the ability to hire a cinematographer, they chose not to, because they would rather be in control of all of those aspects than give power over to somebody else or trust someone else with the look of the film. They want to do it themselves. I think that's only possible, in Hollywood at least, if you have pretty much total freedom from the studio, meaning the studio gives you the $50 or $100 million and says, do what you want with it. So you're able to write your own script, you're able to be your own cinematographer. Unless Zack Snyder was Zack Snyder, if he was just a middle of the road Hollywood director, it's very unlikely that Netflix would have signed off on Army of the Dead being his own cinematographer. They would want to bring in someone that they trusted, whose movies they like the look of, and that's how producers and investors function. They put the different elements together and say, we like this, we like this, we like this. Together, it's going to be something that we like. So unless you've shot your own movies before and been your own cinematographer and director, you're unlikely to get sign-off. So I don't really see this as a ongoing danger to cinematography. It'll certainly happen more, but certainly at the top levels, cinematography isn't going to dry up. It really is only those dozen or so directors who have complete freedom to do whatever they want that may choose to be their own cinematographer, claim the cinematography credit, and while having their gaffer or whoever it is do the coordination of the camera department, leaving them to say, show the gaffer a picture and say, I want it lit like this. Then the gaffer goes and does it, and then they go ahead and shoot the scene the way they want. It's an interesting phenomena, not one that I think is going to become particularly widespread. So cinematography as an art form and as a profession is here to stay. Whether or not it will be as lucrative as it has been in the past for previous generations, and whether or not it can support all these new people coming into the industry and driving the price down, time will tell. There's definitely going to be that top level of people being paid millions of dollars, the Deakins, Chivo sort of area. There's going to be the bottom area where you're getting $1,000 for a wedding, where you have to really sweat for and bring your own gear for. But whether this middle class of cinematographers will endure, only time will tell. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.